Do you feel like you're too old to start exercising at 50? What about 60 or 70 or even 80? Does exercise even help at that point? And isn't nutrition more important than exercise? I'm going to use science to prove to you that you can be 80 years old and benefit from exercise. I'm going to describe exactly what those benefits are, and that exercise is arguably more important, if not as important, as nutrition. I also want to dedicate this video to my dad, who asked me to make this video, which really got me to reflect that many people, of which many are our parents and our grandparents, don't have the right answers to these questions, and they really need this information. So this one's for my dad. Most people want three things when it comes to their health. Number one, they want to live as long as they can. Two, they want to do that pain-free. And three, maybe the most important, is they want to be able to do it under their own agency. To live under your own agency means that you can use your own body, and oftentimes really depending on your own two legs, to do what you want, when you want. You want to get out of bed? You can do that under your own agency. You want to go to the bathroom right now? You can go do that. You want to go get food, whether that's in the fridge or if you're going grocery shopping, you have the ability to do that when you want. You want to see loved ones and friends? You get to choose when that happens. And to be under your own agency, you also have to be sound of mind, meaning that you can make your own decisions. And that also you remember who you are as well as who your loved ones and friends are as well. Most of us know someone who cannot live without some assistance anymore. And oftentimes many of us believe that this is inevitable, that it is an inevitable process of aging. But that is categorically untrue, and I'm going to prove it to you. Okay, so starting with first order principles. To move under your own agency for your entire life, you need muscle. Muscle is what moves your skeleton. Sarcopenia is the age-related loss of muscle. If we are sedentary, meaning we live a low physical activity level life, we will lose between 3 to 8% of muscle mass with every decade after the age of 30. So let's say between 30 and 40, you lose 8% of muscle. You will have 92% of what you started with. At 50, you'll have 85%. And at 60, you will have 78% of what you started with. And you haven't even retired yet. If I told you you were going to lose about a quarter of your face or a quarter of your limbs by the age of 60, you'd be like, what is this flesh-eating disease and how do we stop it? But we don't react the same way when we think about losing muscle, and we really should. You need a certain threshold of muscle for any task you perform. Once you fall below that line, you need assistance. The good news is, even after 80, you can stop muscle loss and even put muscle on. So if you have dipped below that line, you can, through resistance training, build enough muscle and strength to come back over that line. It is never too late to start. You can start at any age and bring back enough strength and functionality to regain movement under your own agency. There are so many studies showing this. In just one study of hundreds, the researchers took 87 to 96-year-olds, put them through a 8-week resistance training program. And in that 8 weeks, the group gained about 9% of muscle in their thighs, their quadriceps. 9% is about what we lose over a decade. And leg strength on average increased by 174%. They more than doubled, almost tripled their leg strength in just 8 weeks. And remember, these are 87 to 96-year-olds. But what if you started now at 50, 60, or 70? In this graph, you can see how physical activity delays the decline in being able to move under your own agency. Here, they show it through VO2 max, which we'll talk about, and muscle strength testing. In one of the studies that these authors reference, the researchers were able to show that 80-year-old resistance trained weightlifting champions could generate as much power as someone that is 55 years old and untrained. This suggests that resistance training and VO2 max training can delay the onset of physical frailty by as much as 25 years. It is also important to train at speed. It appears that the predominant type of muscle we lose as we age are type 2 muscle fibers, or fast twitch muscle. Fast twitch muscle is important for speed work, think sprinting, jumping, ballistic movements, but they also fatigue faster, you tire faster. You can't sprint for a very long time. Slow twitch muscles are more important for endurance activities, think jogging or even just walking. You can do them for much longer, but at slower speeds. After the age of 60, tripping and falling becomes one of the leading causes of death, if not disability. 1 in 3 people over 65 years of age will fall every year. And up to 78% of those people who do fall lose functional independence. When we fall, what we need is strong bones to prevent our hip from breaking. But we can do one better. How about when we trip, we have enough foot speed to kick out our leg and leg strength to catch ourselves, to decelerate so we don't keep falling. So in addition to resistance training, which is training in which we apply resistance or tension to our muscles through some sort of weight, we want to also do speed work. And at the end of this video, I'll give you some ways that you could incorporate this. Another important factor for being able to move under your own agency is your VO2 max, which I had mentioned earlier. Your VO2 max is the maximal amount of oxygen, measured in milliliters or liters, that your body can consume at a given rate, usually measured in minutes. Every movement we perform requires some basal amount of oxygen consumption to perform it. Again, there is a threshold that we need to meet, that if we fall below, even if we have enough muscle, we don't have the oxygen capacity to perform those movements. So for instance, if we were trying to get up from a chair, but didn't have a high enough VO2 max, we could run out of breath before we got out of that chair. But maybe more impressively than that, when you look at people's VO2 maxes and compare that to their risk of dying from any cause, VO2 max outpredicts how long you will live more than any other health factor I have seen. To illustrate this, in this table, it lists a variable and then a hazard ratio for all-cause mortality. All-cause mortality means dying from any cause: heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, old age. A hazard ratio is the probability that something will happen, in this case, dying from any cause, if the person has or does the variable versus someone who does not. For instance, someone who smokes, the variable, has a 1.41 or 41% higher probability of dying from any cause in the next decade than someone who does not smoke. Here's another one. Someone with ESRD, or end-stage renal disease, has a 2.76 or 176% higher probability of dying from any cause in the next decade than someone who does not have it. Now, researchers collected data on over 120,000 patients and tested their VO2 max, and then grouped them into the bottom 25% of VO2 max and called them low. The 25 to 50% group of VO2 max they grouped and called them below average, 50 to 75% and called them above average, 75 to 97.6% and called them high, and then the top 2.3% they called elite. When we compare those with the lowest VO2 max to the elite, the low group is 5 times more likely to die of any cause in the next decade than the elite group. To put that in perspective, living a sedentary life is more hazardous to your health than end-stage renal failure. Here it is in graphical form. The good news is going from just being low to being below average is a 50% reduction in mortality over a decade. If you then go from low to above average, it's about 60 or 70% reduction in mortality. Also, in this meta-analysis, which takes the raw data from multiple smaller studies to ask a question that has more statistical power because it has a larger sample size than any one study, this group was able to show that by adding aerobic training in cardio to sedentary individuals with an average age of 67, they were able to increase their VO2 max by 3.5 from 23 mils per kilogram of body weight per minute. So that is an increase to 26.6. If we look at this chart, that took this group of people from being in the poor range to the fair range. And as we just saw, that probably significantly improved their health and longevity. There are many ways to increase your VO2 max, from long-form steady-state cardio to short 4-minute bouts of high-intensity interval training. So you just have to go by your preference. Okay, what about our brains? Our brains are often what we think of as ourselves. So for instance, if you were to get a cut on your arm, it's true that your arm may never be the same, in the fact that there may be a scar there that will never go away, but it's still your arm. If you were to take that same cut, that same lesion, and apply it to your brain, depending on where it is, it could completely change who you are. In other words, your brain is more sensitive to things that are bad for your body. Here's an analogy. If you've ever visited a vineyard, you'll see rows of grapevines, and some vineyards have a rose bush at the head of a row of grapevines. The reason is if there are any plant diseases that are going to impact the grapevines, they're going to kill or impact the rose bushes first because the roses are more sensitive or susceptible to those diseases. So vineyards use those as an early warning system that something may attack their grapevines. Your brain is like the rose bushes. They are more susceptible than your body is to things that are bad for it, which is why sometimes our brains can decline before our bodies do. So if it's bad for your body, it's probably bad for your brain. And the opposite is true as well. If it's good for your body, it's probably good for your brain. For instance, this is a study that was done in women where their average age at the beginning of the study was 50 years old. And they were followed for 44 years in the study. At the beginning, they tested these women for their VO2 max, which here they call their fitness. Then they examined these ladies for dementia every 6 to 12 years. The women in the low fitness group compared to the medium fitness group had a 24% increased probability of getting dementia, while the high fitness group compared to the middle fitness group had an 88% decreased probability of getting dementia. In fact, 32% of the women in the low fitness group eventually did get dementia in the study, while only 5% of the women in the high fitness group developed dementia over the course of those 44 years. So we can't really experiment well on people's brains to understand the exact mechanisms of why exercise has this beneficial effect on brains, but there have been enough correlation studies and animal studies that have mechanisms described that give us a pretty good idea. Some proposed mechanisms include our muscles secrete factors called myokines into our bloodstream, and these directly and indirectly act on the brain and increase neural connections and neurogenesis. In other words, the growth of new neurons. That was believed impossible 20, 30 years ago in adults to grow new neurons. That has since been disproven it is possible. Exercise also increases the sheer force that your blood drums or hits against your blood vessels, which helps strengthen the blood vessels all over your body, including the ones in your brain. That thereby probably helps keep bad things from leaking into your brain, which have a much worse effect when they leak into our brains than when they leak into other parts of our body. Think inflammatory factors. We don't want those in our brain. Another thing that your brain does is at night when you sleep, it backwashes itself with fluid to get rid of plaques that have built up during the day while you are awake. Yes, we build plaques every single day while we are awake. And one of the reasons sleep and getting good quality sleep is so important is because your brain does this cleaning, washing thing at night. But in order to effectively wash our brains need something to wash in. So for instance, think of putting your brain in a bucket and then filling that bucket with water and then being able to wash your brain. If that bucket has leaks in it, holes in it, the water leaks out and we don't really get to wash our brain well. Well, the same thing is true with our blood vessels. If our blood vessels can leak in the direction of our brain, when our brain washes itself, that liquid can leak into our blood vessels, and therefore it doesn't get an efficient wash in. That is another reason why having strong, resilient blood vessels is so important for our brain health. The amazing thing is that even for people with dementia already, starting to exercise can improve their cognitive function as well. That is how powerful exercise is. What about nutrition? So most people think that being overweight is more unhealthy than being inactive. And so they believe that nutrition ahead of physical activity is the key to health. This study looked at the association between cardiovascular fitness and weight status on all-cause mortality. They wanted to see if your weight mattered if you were actually fit. So compared to normal fit individuals, unfit individuals, no matter if they were normal weight or overweight, had 2 times the risk of all-cause mortality. Whereas fit, overweight, or even obese people had the same mortality risk as fit, normal weight people. So in other words, the person's weight did not impact their mortality risk, just their fitness level did. It is almost impossible to talk about all of the benefits exercise can give you starting at any age. Besides what we've already talked about, it can help with the prevention or management of type 2 diabetes. It can help lower your blood pressure. It can help lower LDL cholesterol while also decreasing triglycerides in your bloodstream, while also increasing the good cholesterol, HDL cholesterol. It can increase bone density. I mean, the list goes on and on. The funny thing is, if I were to tell you I have a prescription that is going to improve your health, improve your physical appearance, improve your mental state, it's neuroprotective, good for you in almost any way that we can think of or measure, what would you say? You'd either say that is impossible or give me this prescription right now, right? It exists. The prescription is, drumroll please, exercise. Okay, let's talk about what type of exercise. What most of these studies show is just going from complete inactivity to some activity gives you a huge, enormous benefit. So you don't have to go from never working out to working out 5 days a week. Even just going from no days a week to 1 day a week will have a significant impact on your life. It probably gives you 50% of the benefit going from 0 to 1 day. Splitting that day up into 30 minutes of resistance training so that we can build and retain muscle, 30 minutes of cardiovascular training to help improve our cardiovascular system and our VO2 max. And it doesn't have to be things that you don't like. You can do cardio through Zumba. You can take a class. You can go jogging. You can join a run group. There are so many options. The option you should choose is the one that you like because you want to continue to be able to do this for the rest of your life. If you want to know the optimal plan, you've done the 1 day a week for a couple of months, you've built the habit, you're ready to take the next step. What would that look like? Okay, firstly, to retain our muscles, we want to resistance train full body at least twice a week. Here I will list out exercises that you can do at home or at a gym with just dumbbells. This should take 30 minutes or less to get through. You want to do moderate to vigorous cardiovascular training 2 to 3 times a week. Again, this can be your Zumba class, this can be your hot hit Pilates class. If you are doing 2 to 3 times a week of just moderate cardiovascular exercise, I recommend adding on just 4 minutes of high intensity interval training where you are performing some activity with high intensity that gets you to 90% of your highest heart rate, your maximum heart rate, for 20 seconds, and then take a 10-second break and repeat that for 8 to 10 times. So you can do this cycling on a bike, you can do this sprinting, stopping, sprinting. You can come to a hot hit Pilates class where we do this. Lastly, to ensure that we are retaining speed as well as the skill of jumping, what you want to do is add 5 to 10 minutes of ballistics training. So this is things like squat jumps, jumping up and down, jumping backwards and forwards, jumping side to side, and jump twisting as well. This will cover your speed work as well as your ballistics work. I've listed here things that you can try to incorporate at least once a week. That is all you need. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Most of this can be covered through group fitness classes. So just an example, if you were to come to Hot Hit Pilates 2 to 3 times a week, you will get your resistance training covered, you will get your moderate cardio covered, you will get your vigorous cardio covered, and then just adding once a week, 5 to 10 minutes of some kind of ballistic training, as I described before, or you could add a different class, like a step class that has a lot of jumping in it as well, just as examples. Now, if you're wondering where nutrition comes into play, number 1 is fitness. Get your fitness right first, barring any specific medical conditions. But the second biggest lever you can pull is the nutrition lever. And it's pretty simple. Number 1, get enough protein. As we age, our body is not as good at absorbing protein as it once was. So we need a little bit more as we age. If you try to get 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, that should have you covered at any age. If you are struggling to get that through your diet, add whey protein powder to your everyday mix. It is a game changer. It will help you incredibly. Apart from that, you want to eat enough calories, however you want to mix it, fats and carbs, that you are at a healthy weight. On the screen, I'm showing healthy weight ranges for your height. If you are above this range and would like to be in a healthy weight range, you can create a 300 to 500 calorie deficit a day, no more than that, in order to get into a healthy weight range. That's it. No matter what age you are at, it is never too late. Just ask Charles Euchster, who took up bodybuilding in his 80s and then gave a TED Talk on why bodybuilding at the age of 93 is a great idea. I definitely recommend checking out that video. Charles lived to the ripe old age of 98. If you like this video, go ahead and smash that like button. I don't know why, but the YouTube algorithm likes when you do that. Just kidding, I know why, and I like it too. See you guys next time.